What's up, everybody? This is Liam Klitschum at NAB 2018. I'm here with Nate Rodriguez-Vera, a big name. He was here yesterday giving a presentation. He's hanging around the Maxon booth, and I'm just going to ask him a few questions about how he got started and what he's doing in the industry. So I know yesterday you kind of gave a background about how you got started with music and then went into this. So can you tell the audience too that's watching just like a quick snippet of what you told us yesterday?
Sure. First of all, hi. Yeah, basically, so I was working as a DJ, producer, eventually became more interested in doing sound design, things of that sort. But anyways, like during that time period, I started becoming more aware of the connections between music and visuals, right? A lot of people who are DJs, musicians, other performers kind of want to have like a tight like brand. So sometimes if they are, say, signed on to a big label, the label will take care of that. But most of the times, if you're more of like an independent musician, you kind of just have to take control of that yourself. So that's how eventually I started teaching myself to use like the usuals like Photoshop, Illustrator, After Effects. Did that for a while. Eventually just became a little bored with the whole like 2D world, and that turned into me like searching for a couple of options, tried a couple of like different like 3D applications. It didn't really click for me until I was introduced to Cinema 4D by a friend, and then that's when it all clicked, and it's been history since then, you know.
So something that blew my mind yesterday was hearing that you've been doing it just for like 2 years, and you got started in Cinema 4D Lite,
Yes.
and then moved over, right?
Yeah, so exactly. So I had Creative Cloud, and I had After Effects, and through After Effects I had access to Cinema 4D Lite. So, you know, I'm a strong proponent for paying for your software, right? So the only Cinema 4D version that I had access to was Lite. So I jumped into it, and also it was a good way to kind of just like not get too crazy because I didn't know how it was going to go. And yeah, this was literally January 2016 that I made the jump to that, and immediately I used it, and I think like the very first time, even though the first things I made were not great, but it made sense, and I got hooked, and eventually wound up buying studio and just went all in, yeah.
So why don't you tell us a little bit about your process now? Because you told us a little bit and showed like your first renders and where you're at now, and myself mostly doing Redshift tutorials. I know that you're doing Redshift, but you've kind of done like the gamut a little bit too, of like starting with standard, and then I think you were an Octane user for a little bit, right? And then you went to Redshift. So can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so I started out with standard, then I started trying out physical for a while. I was like happy with physical for a while. I thought it was great, but eventually I kind of like was lacking that speed, right? That, like I wanted to be able to, because that's one of the big things about Cinema 4D. You get to create fast, and I also wanted to be able to render fast. So I actually jumped from physical into Cycles 4D, and did that for a while, and I still like it a lot, especially when I'm doing X-particle specific stuff. But then I tried Redshift. I tried Octane for a little while, and I liked it for certain things, but I clicked more with Redshift when I tried it out. I had also experimented a little bit with Arnold, but I just didn't have a powerful enough computer for it to render quickly. So Redshift kind of felt like it was like this weird hybrid brother of Arnold that was like GPU powered, like super fast, with the benefit of being biased. So you could like run through all these little cheats to make your renders a lot faster, and I thought that was great. And now I use them all interchangeably, but I would say still like Redshift is maybe like 90% of what I use. Yeah.
So do you keep most of what you're doing in camera when you're working in Redshift, or do you have like a post-production, like you go into Photoshop and start manipulating stuff there, or what's your split with that?
Yeah, normally I do a little bit of post. I'm like super averse to doing all this like multipass and AOVs and all this stuff, mainly because I am kind of lazy about it. Yeah. I'll just like try and do like a straight beauty pass and then bring it into After Effects if it's animated, and then apply effects, just post-production there, or if it's a still, I'll bring it into Photoshop, tighten it up there. I know I should probably get more into doing AOVs and multipass, but again, I'm just kind of lazy.
Yeah, well, that was the name of your talk too yesterday, which was really interesting. And what I really liked about it too is you were really explaining to the audience that you can take simple shapes and build very dynamic compositions with just a few little bits, and maybe you can tell them about that too, just like your idea behind what you're doing with your work and keeping it as simple as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, I've always been a sucker for simplicity. Even when I was doing 2D design, I always kept things kind of minimal, kind of easy. I liked that kind of like raw, almost like cut up and pasted on like aesthetic. And when I went 3D, I was like, well, I wanted to look a little more polished, but I still like the idea of taking all these simple shapes like primitives or stuff like booleans and things like that, and just creating either like structures, scenes, etc. I guess in a way just kind of takes me back to being a kid and taking blocks and like, building stuff out, and that's just kind of like always been my favorite way of working. And then of course like using mostly then relying on materials and lighting to then bring out the realism in some way, so it doesn't just look like geometry thrown into a scene, right? What was the second part of the question? I'm sorry.
You pretty much covered it. So, how about for just a little wrap up? Where can people find you, and where are you most active? Are you on Twitter, Instagram, or your website? What do you want to throw out there?
Yeah, I would say the easiest way to find me and my most active outlet is Instagram right now. But I'm everywhere. I'm Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, Tumblr. It's all the same. It's at SomeNerve, so SOMENERV. Or my website is somenerve.com.
All right. Well, thanks so much, Nate. I appreciate it. I really enjoyed your talk yesterday, and thanks for coming on.
Yeah.